Hi, Meg here, revisiting my book Presentation Now. I want to talk today about an ingredient in presentations which I see even a lot of really good speakers not using quite right. And it's really straightforward, and if you use it well, you can help people remember you as a much clearer communicator and actually keep people's attention all the way through your presentation. And it's what I call signposting, and it's how you signal in advance where we're going, and then during the presentation where are we at. And there's a real balance to be struck with signposting, because too little signposting means people feel lost. Too much signposting can ruin any kind of curiosity. So think about when we avoid spoilers. At the moment, I'm watching finally the OA. I know it's been on Netflix forever, and the second season's come out. I never really finished watching the first season because I love it so much that I actually stopped watching because I was worried about it finishing. Anyway, I'm super avoiding spoilers at the moment, even though I'm watching with my partner and he's seen it before, and I'm having to stop him kind of say anything about what's coming up because it's so good. But why is that? There's so much suspense and not knowing in the story that I feel like if I knew what was coming up, it might spoil it for me, which is why we talk about spoilers. And so, too much signposting, there's an old adage where they say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. I only partially agree with that, because if you tell people in advance exactly what's going to happen in your presentation, it's as if they've already heard the presentation, and so the curious part of their mind switches off. A bit like people are avoiding Game of Thrones spoilers at the moment. And why? Because you want the suspense. The suspense is what keeps you going. I'm just thinking about how this fits in with. There's a disappointment thing. We'll come back to that. The other side is if you just launch into a presentation with very little signposting, letting people know how long it's going to be, what's going to be happening, they can feel a bit lost. One of my favourite blue sky thinkers did an amazing presentation talking about projects that he'd come across, and the presentation was mainly talking about this extraordinary project, talking about this extraordinary project, talking about this extraordinary project. And when we got to project 4 or 5, I had no idea what was happening. Like, is this my life now? Do I just sit here and will there be 15? And somehow not knowing meant it felt harder to know how much. I don't know. It's a bit like when if I go to a gallery, I like to go all the way around the show to know how big it is, and then go back to the beginning and redo it, because then I know, oh, it's actually 7 rooms, and so if I spend 20 minutes with the first piece of art, I'm going to run out of steam later. And it's a bit like that. So there's a balance to be struck between too much signposting destroys people's curiosity, too little means they can feel lost or not know how much attention to pay. So there's a couple of ways which you can strike a good balance which keep people's curiosity. One is, as you go through the big chunks in your presentation, think about, for this section, what question does this answer in people's minds? For this section, what question does this answer in people's minds? And if you make sure that those questions are they link to question number 4, which is what's important to people, so those are people actually want the answers to these questions, then you can say, so at the end of this presentation you'll have the answer to these 4 questions. And then as you go into your section, you do that section, you finish it, you go, so that was the answer to that question. The next section we're going to talk about is this. And then you talk about it and answer that question. And so you're much more able to give people the number of chunks, but also keep their curiosity. Keeping the number of chunks is also just something really straightforward. You can go, I'm going to talk about 4 projects or 10 projects or 6 points or 4 major, and it really helps people to budget their attention. The other thing, which is what I call curiosity words, is a friend of mine, I talk about this in the book, was a marketing coach, and she was talking about content writing and said the 2 things that we need to be really clear about content writing is burnout and broccoli. So immediately I go, okay, there's 2 major sections to what you're talking about, but also I have no idea what they're about, so it creates curiosity for those 2 sections. One caveat about creating curiosity is we were watching, what's that bloody awful show? The cook show, Hell's Kitchen, with the awful English chef. Can't remember his name. They do these incredible, like, on the next episode bits at the end. And it looks like every time the next episode, it's like a cooking competition show. The kitchen burns down and someone storms out and someone almost dies, which works to go, oh, I'm going to watch the next episode, even though every episode is the same and they need to really learn how to cook scallops. But when you get to the episode, some of that stuff doesn't even happen, or if it does, it was much more innocuous. So be careful with curiosity keywords that you don't create an inordinate amount of curiosity. To be honest, if you've done your good setup at the beginning to establish why they should be listening to you, go back and listen to the benefits and downsides video that was just before this, then you don't need to do very much to keep people's curiosity, but they just need enough signposting to know where they are. And then as you go through your presentation, make sure you kind of mentally tick it off in their mind, so that they know where they are. Yes, you can do that with slides, but just be careful that you don't, make it dull, like a dull plod. You can just spice things up a little bit with some good signposting. Hope that's useful, and it's an ingredient that I see missing a lot and is super simple to introduce into your presentation, isn't it? Click whatever you need to do to just subscribe or like or wherever we are to get the next video, and we're going to keep talking about presentation ingredients for another 1 or 2 videos. See you in the next one.